Hey everyone, apologies for not getting some new content out sooner. I think the last thing I released was a replay of the Weekend Out Thanksgiving special, which is essentially just a mini audio documentary on the history of Thanksgiving. Yeah, things have been kind of crazy, so in an attempt to just get something out for you guys, I'm only going to focus on one topic today. But as they say, it's a doozy. So hopefully the sensational nature of this story will help make up for the brevity of the episode. So let's get into it. This article is dated November 25th, so about a week ago. I'd hoped to cover it sooner. But it's from Hemet Maida's Only Sky blog, and the title is pretty wild. Turkish Creationist Adnan Oktar, I think it is, sentenced to 8,658 years in prison. And I know how dry it can be listening to someone just read an entire news article, so I'll just read certain selected excerpts. A lot of alliteration there. And so this first excerpt I'm going to read gives some background, and I guess, a quote-unquote trigger warning here, because I'm painting this like it's going to be a kind of fun, zany, colorful story, which in a way it is, but it also deals with some pretty heavy or disturbing subject matter. So here we go. Adnan Oktar, I think, once again, a creationist preacher in Turkey, has been sentenced to 8,658 years in prison for a variety of crimes, including running a criminal organization, sexual abuse, torture, and abduction. It comes after he was previously sentenced to over 1,075 years in prison, only to have that verdict overturned by an appellate court. The more recent jaw-dropping sentence came in a retrial. And so included in this article is an interesting and yet perhaps disheartening chart that shows a list of countries with a bar next to each indicating the percentage of that population that supposedly believes in or rejects evolution. And bear with me, this ties into the story. The color blue indicates the amount of people who believe in evolution. Beige or tan represents those who are unsure, and red represents those who don't believe in evolution. And so the charter list is ordered in such a way that the countries that are the most accepting of evolution are at the top, and at the bottom are the countries that are the least accepting of evolution. And at the top, you have several Scandinavian or Nordic countries. And as you'd expect, because they're known to be fairly secular, the bars are almost entirely blue. Well, I'd say it looks like Iceland is probably about 80% of the population, according to this, believes in evolution. Denmark and Sweden, just a little less than that, but still close to 80, I would say. And then next you have France, Japan, the United Kingdom, and they all look like they're below 80, probably somewhere in the 70s. And it's funny, Norway, which is a Nordic country, actually comes in under the UK. And so I don't know if among the Nordic countries, if Norway is considered more traditional or religious, but it's a pretty long list of countries. Actually, it looks like there's at least 34 here. And you go all the way down to the bottom. Yeah, and at the very bottom, coming in last, you have Turkey. And it looks like Turkey is under 30%, maybe somewhere around 25% perhaps of the population that actually believes in evolution. And then there's, wow, I would say probably more than half the bar is red, indicating that probably at least half the population don't believe or, reject evolution. And guess who's right above Turkey? Yep, the United States. It looks like only about 40% of the US population believes in evolution, according to this specific chart. And full disclosure, this chart is at least a decade old, but the way things have been deteriorating, who knows, it could be even worse now. Oh, and I just want to stop to correct myself here so I don't have to do it at the beginning of the next episode or so no one calls me out. I lumped Iceland together with other Scandinavian countries, But technically, Iceland is an island nation, and geographically, it's usually not considered a part of Scandinavia, but culturally, it's sometimes considered Scandinavian. So I just wanted to clarify that. I believe Bjork is from Iceland, Reykjavik specifically, I think. And she was in that movie, The Northman. I like that one. Anyway, back on track. And so this next excerpt deals with Adnan Oktar's role in lowering science literacy in Turkey and promoting creationism, etc. And so it begins, that was largely due to Oktar, who wrote the quote unquote textbook, The Atlas of Creation, under the pen name Harun Yahya, I think it is. He had been very effective in convincing people to ditch evolution. In 2017, Turkey removed evolution from the nation's science classes entirely. Beyond that, however, Oktar was also running a cult, surrounding himself with an army of virtually identical women, and calling himself a feminist, a move that angered Islamic traditionalists. He said he had over 1,000 girlfriends because there was, quote unquote, overflowing of love in my heart for women. And also because he was also, in quotes, extraordinarily potent. And there's an embedded video in the article, and the preview or thumbnail is just amazing. It shows a small group of women, about 5, and they do almost look identical. I imagine these are Turkish women, yet they all have bleach blonde hair. Hair that you can see the roots, and it's almost a sickening yellowish green. It looks like they're all have the same complexion. They're all wearing the same type of makeup. Their face shape or structure almost looks identical. Their body type. So yeah, very strange. I guess this Adnan Oktar guy definitely has a type. Speaking of him, there's an embedded image of him as well up near the top of the article, and he almost looks like a cartoon devil or old-timey stage magician. He has slick black hair, all slicked back, crazy eyebrows, and like manicured dark black facial hair. And a very interesting recording or production setup. He's facing sideways, and it looks like he has 2 iPad minis right next to his head. I will say though, iPad mini, great device. I miss mine. I used to have one that I used as a kind of like a GPS unit on my car's dash. Anyway, yeah, some feminist basically stripping women of their individuality and indoctrinating them into his sex cult. But it continues, over the years, he got into trouble with religious authorities for, among other things, selling alcohol and mixing belly dancers and religion on his TV show. The dancers were allegedly pressured against their will to appear. In 2018, according to Turkish news sources, Oktar was finally arrested on charges ranging from, in quotes, sexual abuse to military espionage. And that was just the beginning. And it looks like there's an embedded statement or perhaps an excerpt from another article here. And it reads, according to the detention warrant, Oktar and his followers are accused of forming a criminal organization, sexual abuse of children. Now that's dark, and I said things would get pretty heavy if they hadn't already. Sexual assault, child kidnapping, sexual harassment, and this is like one of those almost comically long lists of side effects on a drug ad, you know? Blackmailing, false imprisonment, political and military espionage, fraud by exploiting religious feelings, money laundering, violation of privacy, forgery of official documents, opposition to anti-terror law, coercion, use of violence, slander, alienating citizens from mandatory military service, insulting, false incrimination, perjury, aggravated fraud, smuggling, tax evasion, bribery, torture, illegal recording of personal data, violating the law on the protection of family and women, and violating a citizen's rights to get education and participate in politics. Ask your doctor if Turkish sex cults are right for you. No, most likely they're not, really. But the article continues, for a man who had run-ins with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, I think it is, before, it was just a matter of time before he was convicted. And here's another little embedded statement. On Wednesday, November 16th, judges had their final say on the fate of the 215 defendants, including 72 in detention, dashing the hopes of Oktar, who was confident that he would be released, according to his statements in earlier hearings. This time, Oktar was sentenced to 891 years in prison on charges of running a criminal organization, sexual abuse, denial of education rights, torture, abduction, and illegal storage of personal data. Oktar in total was sentenced to 8,658 years, as the court reasoned that he should be sentenced for crimes committed by his disciples as the head of the cult. And there's just two more short little paragraphs left here. It shouldn't be ignored that one of Oktar's quote-unquote kittens, I guess that's what he called the women in his sex cult, said she and other women were repeatedly sexually abused and forced to take birth control afterwards. Police found approximately 69,000 contraceptive pills when they raided his home. Whatever you think about the length of his sentence, there seems to be no shortage of crimes linked to him. A punishment was long overdue. The cult leader and creationist will now remain in prison for the rest of his life, after leaving a legacy of hurting countless people, both physically and mentally. But yeah, just a wild story, and obviously some of the subject matter or details are very disturbing. So apologies if anyone found any of that upsetting, but I found it to be newsworthy and I want to share it. And obviously goes without saying, beware religious leaders, beware cults. Think for yourselves and beware. Wow. But I'm glad the guy's in prison, but the headline alone is just amazing, was it? Turkish Creationist sentenced to 8,658 years in prison. He's definitely not outlasting that that sentence, that's for sure. And I don't want to make a liar out of myself, but I may try to release one more little news story before the weekend is out. But either way, as always, thanks for listening.